So here is Dark Galaxy, one of the community's favorite Rush Duel decks. Building and playing this deck for this video is actually the first time I've ever touched a Dark Galaxy deck, and I found the experience very, very fun. The cards all work together in surprisingly synergistic ways, and it has a lot of strengths, and I would say very few weaknesses, but the few weaknesses it does have become apparent and quite glaring when you get into the games. So the main takeaway from this deck is that it is a fusion deck. That means we'll be relying a lot on our fusion monsters. We don't specifically need to rely on our fusion monsters because our main deck monsters are pretty strong. But the fusion monsters are going to be the main combo pieces and how we're going to be winning a lot of our games. So I guess we'll start there. First up, we have the hardest one to summon, Voidvelgir Gigantomachia. So made using Requiem and Cryosaur, which are both level 8 monsters, so already it's quite difficult to get out because we have to commit 2 giant guys to get it out. We can send 1 card from our hand to the graveyard, destroy a spell trap on either field. Also, this turn, this card gains 500 attack and can attack twice. And the thing to take note of, that isn't attack monsters twice, that is just attack twice. So we can get rid of back row and attack twice, so this card is just really, really good. It's just really hard to summon. Next up, we have Voidvelgir Theogonia. So made using Cryosaur and Dark Prophet. So again, Cryosaur is our level 8 monster, and Dark Prophet is our card that can get back fusion from the graveyard. So pretty relatively simple to summon, especially since we can get back our fusion. But during the main phase, this card was special summoned, we can special summon 1 level 8 Galaxy type monster from our graveyard face up to our field. The monster special summoned by this effect cannot be destroyed by card effects until the end of your opponent's next turn. So just by the fact we summoned this, we know that we will have a Cryosaur, which means at the very least we will be able to summon Voidvelgir Cryosaur, which is a decent monster in its own right. But being able to summon any of our level 8 monsters can be really good. That means we could go into Requiem if we needed just a giant attacker, give it protections, also really good, or we could summon out Elysium. So again, really good combo piece, and 3000 attack, 3000 defense is nothing to snuff at. Next up, Voidvelgir Apocalypse. So made using Pale Rider and Prophet. So again, Prophet is our card that recycles fusion, and Pale Rider is our 1600 vanilla monster. But we can send 1 card from our hand to the graveyard, and this isn't just the turn it's summoned, it's whenever. This turn, this card gains 1000 attack and cannot be destroyed by card effects. Then if you activate this effect during your main phase that you special summon this card, you can add 1 Dark Hole from your graveyard to your hand. So the most important part about this effect is that it just says effects, not your opponent's effects, which means we could then use said Dark Hole to destroy every card on the field except our Voidvelgir Apocalypse. And that same protection is also offered to Theogonia. Again, cannot be destroyed by effects, which means, again, protected from Dark Hole. So what we can do is summon out Apocalypse, then summon out Theogonia, then use Dark Hole, wipe the whole board except for the monster that we summoned off of Theogonia and our Apocalypse, which means we should have something around 5000 damage ready to smack our opponent's face, which is really, really strong. And finally, we have the main kind of combo extender, which is Voidvelgir Protostar. Again, made using Dark Prophet, which is our recycler, and Globule, which is our 0 attack, 1300 defense monster that can be treated as 2 tributes for the tribute summon of a Dark Galaxy monster. So, really cool effect. Add 1 level 4 or lower Galaxy type monster from your graveyard to your hand. Then, if you have Dark Hole in your graveyard, you can special summon 1 level 8 monster from your graveyard face up to your field. So, this card has a couple of restrictions on it. First off, it only adds level 4 or lower, but that's fine. A lot of our really good cards are level 4 or lower. We can take back Prophet to get back Fusion to do another Fusion play. We could get back Kyrie, who we could then use to get back one of our boss monsters from the graveyard back to our hand. We can get back Meteor Lava if we just want to mill. We can get back Globule if we already have a tribute monster, and we can use this to tribute out easily. So Protostar is really, really cool. But the other effect is if we have Dark Hole in our graveyard, especially some level 8 monster, again, really good. We can cheat back a boss monster. And with the newly released Dark Hole device, this card becomes Dark Hole in the graveyard. We now have extra ways to trigger it. Now, we're already on the 1 Dark Hole device at the moment, but we'll get to that when we go through the spell cards. But yeah, basically, Protostar, really, really strong extender. The only thing really wrong with this card is it's 2400 attack, but it has 2800 defense to make up for it. So, going through the monsters, we have a Voidvelgir Pale Rider, again, half of the fusion, and a 1600 attack is nothing to snuff at. It's decent. Not really much more to say about that. Dark Lord Zerato is our legend monster. Now, this card is insane. If we have 4 or more dark attribute monsters with different names in our graveyard, we can tribute summon this card in attack position by tributing 1 dark attribute monster. So 1 tribute for a 2800 attacker is already really, really good. But we can send a dark attribute monster from our hand to the graveyard to destroy all monsters on your opponent's field, destroy this card during the end phase of this turn. So basically, we want to use this effect when we're going to try and go for game, but wipe all your opponent's monsters out and then just try and slap them in the face for a ton of damage is insane. It's basically like having a Raigeki. It is crazy. So Dark Lord Zerato, fantastic boss monster. Next up, Requiem. So we can send the top card of our deck to the graveyard. This card gains attack equal to the number of face-up dark attribute monsters on the field times 300 until the end of this turn. Then if your opponent has a face-up light attribute monster on the field, this card gains 600 attack until the end of the turn. So 2500 attack already is decent. That is a really good stat line. But we can also boost this thing's attack to 34 if we have 3 dark monsters, and if our opponent has a light monster, we can get it all the way up to 4000. Now, there is a way we can try and guarantee that by using our Burst Ray Gunman, which reveals a level 7 or higher Galaxy monster from our hand, which would usually be Requiem, and then we can inflict damage to our opponent equal to the number of face-up monsters on the field times 200, then you can make one face-up monster on your opponent's field become light. Now, we're only on one copy of Burst Ray Gunman because the deck does have a lot of ways to kind of toolbox the graveyard, so we don't feel like we need more of this, and this effect is only really useful if we're using Requiem, so we decided to only go with the one. But Requiem is a really good boss monster. It's our best way to get a lot of attack points. If our opponent summons like a 4000 maximum monster, Requiem is one of the only ways that we can kill it by battle, so we definitely want to have access to this card. It's very, very strong. Next up, Voidvelger Cryosaur. So if your opponent has 2 monsters on the field, which again, this restriction does come up a lot of the time your opponent will only have 1 monster on the field, so you won't get to use it, and also maximums only count as 1 monster, so you cannot use Cryosaur's effect if you're staring down a maximum, but we can send the top 3 cards of a deck to the graveyard. If a dark attribute galaxy type monster is among the cards sent, this card can attack up to that many times this turn. Also, if the card sent are 3 dark attribute galaxy type monsters with the same level, you can destroy all face-up level 8 or lower monsters on your opponent's field. So Cryosaur, to me, has always been the soul of this deck. It's very, very fun to kind of play this like slot machine style game where you mill the top of your deck, hope you hit 3 monsters, and then bam, you get 3 attacks. And 3 attacks to 2500 attack turns out is really good, and it really hurts. But again, you might hit 0 or 1, in which case the effect has done nothing but mill you. So it doesn't come up very often, but its other effect to destroy all face-up level 8 or lower monsters on your opponent's side of the field does come up. So what some people do is they try and build their deck to have as many of the same level type monsters, and usually something like 4, basically stick a load of level 4 Dark Galaxies in their deck to try and make sure Cryosaur's effect is live more often. I find that this actually makes the deck feel a lot brickier, and I prefer this build, which has a lot more spread out levels, but occasionally Cryosaur's effect to pop the whole board will happen, and it will be quite nice. Next up, Voidvelger Elysium, only a single copy. So again, 2500 attack, really decent stat line. That's one thing all of the Dark Galaxies have in common. They all have 2500 attack, which is great. We can send 1 card from our hand to the graveyard, change 1 face-up monster on the opponent's field to face-down defense position. This card gains 500 attack, so boosts up to 3000 to the end of this turn. Also, if you send a monster to the graveyard to meet this requirement, this card cannot be destroyed by your opponent's trap card effects. So again, changing monsters to defense mode can be really relevant depending on the matchup. You can basically turn off equip spells a lot of the time, just because the monster that is equipped to would now be face down. You can change a monster that is too high attack to defense mode if they have low defense points, and being able to get that trap immunity also can be really, really strong. Next up, Star Transfer. So this is a card that, when I first looked at it, I thought it was really bad. It's a 1700 1 tribute monster, because it's level 6. Send this face-up card from your field to the graveyard, special summon a galaxy-type monster from your hand, face-up to your field, then if you special summoned a level 8 monster by this effect, this turn it gains 400 attack, and if it attacks defense position monster, inflict piercing. So Star Transfer is a really good consistency tool, and actually one of the best cards for facilitating one of the things this deck does really well. And that is ending on 3 level 8 or higher monsters. A lot of the time, in order to summon out a level 8 or higher monster, you'll have to have 2 monsters out to tribute or to fuse or something along those lines to get out your big guy. But this deck doesn't have to do that so much. Star Transfer can just cheat out a level 8. Globule can be treated as 2 tributes to get out one of your level 8s. And Dark Lord Zerato again can just be tributed with 1 tribute, which means this deck is very good at ending on a board of 3 very big monsters, which a lot of other decks can struggle to do. Star Transfer also gives 400 attack and piercing. That 400 attack, when combined with something like Requiem, can get up to 4400, which breaks that 4000 mark, which again can be really relevant because we could use that to get over things like problematic maximums in combat, and piercing can help us end games. So again, really strong card. Next up, we have Voidvelger Cataphractos. So when you normal summon this card this turn and have another face-up dark attribute monster on your field, send the top card of your deck to the graveyard. Then if you send a monster to the graveyard with this effect, you can add 1 level 8 galaxy-type monster from your graveyard to your hand. So again, recycling our big level 8 monsters is really good. Milling ourselves is really good. And getting those level 8 monsters to our hand can be good to 1, tribute summon them, or 2, send them with trade-in. There's a lot of things that we can do by having level 8s in our hand, and the fact that our level 8s are quite often used for our different fusions means that they're always a welcome addition. So again, Globule we've already spoken about. The next up, Kyrie. So send 1 face-up level 7 or lower galaxy-type monster from your field to the graveyard. So basically any galaxy monster that is not a fusion or one of our boss monsters. Add 1 Voidvelger Requiem or Voidvelger Cryosaur from your graveyard to your hand. Then you can choose 1 face-up card on your field. If you do, that card cannot be destroyed by card effects. We can use this to get back our big monsters again, which again, very welcome. We can discard them and trade in, we can tribute summon them, we need them to get our fusions going. We basically can't really play the game without our boss monsters, so having extra ways to get them back is always going to be really useful. But also, you can make one of your cards unable to destroy by card effects, and again, not opponent's card effects, all card effects, which means we can drop something like Dark Hole Device, we can drop Dark Hole, wipe out our opponent's board, and then protect our monsters, which is always going to be fantastic, as well as just protecting them from things like Torrential Tribute, or things like Mirror Force, or Dark Revelation. Just really good card. Next up, we have Meteor Lava. So no requirement, send cards equal to the number of face-up Galaxy type monsters on your field from the top of your deck to the graveyard. So again, we want to mill into our graveyard and then start toolboxing our graveyard as much as we can. Meteor Lava is a great way to do that. We're only on 2 because I feel like the rest of these cards are more important, and milling ourselves, although is good, a lot of the time doesn't get us anywhere. Sometimes you'll just open with Meteor Lava and a bunch of the weak monsters, and then you'll realize, well, if I want to mill, I have to end my turn with a 600 attack monster on the field in attack mode, which is not really where I want to be. And then Dark Prophet. So during the turn you normal summon this card, shuffle 3 Dark Attribute Galaxy type monsters from your graveyard into the deck to add fusion from your graveyard to your hand. So again, there are a lot of effects in this deck that do shuffle cards back from the graveyard. Things like Globule, things like Prophet. So we have to keep making sure that we're milling, which again, a lot of the deck does. But because of that, that also means we get to recycle a lot of the cards back into our deck, which means we can draw into more Prophets, we can draw into more Globules, we can draw into more Cataphractals. Because this deck has a lot of milling and a lot of shufflers, that does mean that we're able to, again, just recycle our effects a lot, which can be really, really good. Next up, our new spell card, Dark Hole Device. So we can send 3 Dark Attribute Galaxy type monsters from your hand to the graveyard. Again, this can be tricky because we have to actually have 3 in our hand, but it's also not the end of the world because, or we could just have a face-up Dark Attribute Galaxy type fusion monster, which again, if we summon out something like Apocalypse, we can make it have protection. That way our Apocalypse can't be destroyed, which means we can destroy all monsters on the field. Then you can add 1 Galaxy type monster from your graveyard to your hand. So assuming we already have a Void Welder Apocalypse out, we've discarded a card, so it's gone up to 35, we can now add any monster from our graveyard back to our hand. Let's say we have a Pale Rider, which we know we have in there because we've got Apocalypse out. Then we have, what, 51 just immediately? And 51 is a huge number and can just end the game. So 3 fusion, because it's a fusion deck, who would have thought? Next up, Dark Hole. Again, already the best legend spell probably in the game. I think it's a toss-up between this and Graceful Charity a lot of the time. But the deck wants to be running Dark Hole anyway. We have Dark Hole synergies, so I don't know why you wouldn't be running this. It's fantastic. Next up, our Spell Trap Hate. So this is one of the other weaknesses of this deck. This deck doesn't really have any way to deal with back row outside of Universe Storm. Again, being able to pop back row is really, really good, but a lot of our plays wipe the board of monsters and then go, well, now I can attack you directly for a shit ton, just please don't have any trap cards that can stop me. So it sucks that we've only really got room for 2 of this. We can't really squeeze another one in. The spell trap room in this deck is quite tight. But if we could, we would be running more because, again, one of this deck's major weaknesses is back row hate. Next up, Void Corridor. So this is another card I didn't like when I first read it. If you have a Dark Attribute Galaxy type monster in your graveyard, send 1 card from your hand to the graveyard, add a Dark Attribute Galaxy type monster from your graveyard to your hand. So again, this -1s you, which is not fantastic. You don't really want to be reducing the number of cards you have because that means you lower the chances that you can extend and keep plays going, summon out more and more powerful monsters, and try to create a really strong end board. But Void Corridor does let you take back any Dark Galaxy monster, which means we can take back Prophet, which then gets us access to Fusion, and then we can go into a Fusion play. We can get back Globule to cheat out one of our big monsters. We can get out Kyrie if we just need to give something destruction protection. We can get out basically anything. This lets us toolbox our entire graveyard, which is fantastic. Getting out our boss monsters again, really, really important. We could even just put them back in our hand and then discard them for trading if we just feel like we just need to draw into and out. So again, Corridor, really good combo piece. Trade-in, again, this deck is mainly on level 8 monsters as our boss monsters, so we need a way to just draw cards. Trade-in is going to be the way to do that. Then we have Nobody's Scat Thief, fantastic trap card, can stop you from dying if your opponent's got level 8 and lower monsters that they're trying to kill you with. It can sort out your hand, we can sort out the top of the deck, we can get rid of all of the big bricks in our hand, we can basically fix everything. Scat Thief is just fantastic, so I think this is probably still the best generic trap card. And then Magic Cylinder, again, of course it's Magic Cylinder. It's the best legend trap in the game. It wins games, it steals games. It also is very threatening. A lot of people don't have ways to kind of out Magic Cylinder outside of running their own legends or a ridiculous amount of back row hate. So yeah, Magic Cylinder is going to stay in here until something else comes out that's better, or the meta just shifts or gets banned or something. So the side deck, we have the Aquillas. There's still a lot of level 6 decks going around. Things like Excutie, we want to be able to make sure that we have outs to them. We have the Talismanic Seal Array. This is because the other big weakness of this deck is it doesn't really boost attack that high. If we get everything set up, we can make Requiem like 4,000. If we combine it with Star Transfer, we can get up to like 4,400. But we don't have really consistent ways to deal with giant maximum monsters, so Talismanic Seal Array is in here. Being able to reduce their attack by 2,000 is always going to be super relevant. We have another Void Corridor in case we feel like we need it. We have the Prison Island Cell Block 5 and 6. This is in here specifically to deal with Harpies, because this is a floodgate that really, really hurts them. We have traditional attacks, again, to deal with maximum decks, because, again, they will generally try to turbo draw cards, so we'll try and punish them by making them discard some of those cards and hopefully hit some of the maximum pieces out of the hand. We have the second Scat Thief. This is specifically useful into things like Guildford OTK and Cyber Dragons, because a lot of the time they try and kill you very, very quickly with level 8 or lower monsters. We have Word Working, again, to try and stop 7's Wonder Fusion, but also works against a lot of decks, but that'd be the primary deck we're sending using this against. And then we have Torrential Tribute, which we'll bring in against decks that want to turn off our battle traps, things like Harpies, things like the new Phoenix. There's a lot of decks that either have a lot of back row hate, or will summon monsters that can destroy your back row, or will just turn off your traps during the battle phase, so we want a way to react to those monsters when they're summoned. So yeah, this is the deck. Again, it's very, very fun. I do think it's very, very strong, but it does have a few things holding it back. Again, struggling to deal with giant attack monsters can be a bit of a letdown. I've had some games where my opponent just summon a maximum and I go, I physically can't do anything about this, I guess I lose. Also, the fact that we don't have many ways to deal with back row. Having only 2 Universe Storm as the only ways in the entire deck to deal with back row does kind of suck. If our opponent is on a trap heavy deck, we kind of just have to keep walking into their traps again and again and again until hopefully they just kind of run out and then we can end them that way. The only other thing is this deck is just, it's not as consistent as Light Galaxy, and it's never going to be realistically, because Light Galaxy does have the option to fuse using any Light Galaxy monster. But what this deck does do, again, is be able to summon out 3 boss monsters quite easily by using things like Star Transfer and Void Velger Globule to facilitate tributing out our big monsters. It has a lot of ways to keep reusing our monsters and reusing our cards and just keeping them back and going again and again and again and just keep recycling cards. So I still think this deck is a low tier 2 deck. I think all it would take is a couple of cards to make this deck a tier 1 meta threat. It just needs that little extra push. But let's fire in some replays so I can show you what I've been talking about